What's up, traders? Matt from the Trade Brigade here with your weekend crypto report, where as always, I do a technical analysis and give you my thoughts on the coins listed up above. If you did not tune into last week's video, that's alright, but you should be made aware we've added Binance Coin, we've added Solana, SHIB has made it to the bottom of our list here, really just for ease of access, and we have dropped Stellar from the list here. So a couple of changes, did want to just remind you of that. Let's jump right in and kick things off though with the Bitcoin 4-hour chart. I'm leaving it zoomed out so we can see the overall nature of this pattern, which is kind of developing as a cup and handle. If you want to just boil this down to its simplest form, you could look at the most recent leg up as a simple bull flag, something that would look like this. So overall, both patterns are bullish from a longer time frame perspective. Let's zoom in a bit on this price action and kind of discuss what might unfold here over the course of the weekend. It's really going to boil down to this range, okay? So it's either a breakout up and over 64,000 or a breakdown underneath 60,000. And you can clearly see how many times this has been respected. So resistance, then support, then resistance, resistance, and resistance here. Same thing holds true for the 60,000 level. You can see resistance, support, support, resistance after it was broken, right? And then it turned into support here. We'll see if it does hold as support going forward, but it's basically, again, a directional move can be produced up and over 64 or down and underneath $60,000. In each instance, we're going to have targets to pay attention to. So I would call this a crapshoot in here, not much to trade for. Wait for the break, either again, up and over 64 or down and under 60. So let's cover upside targets first. Obviously, the all-time high will be in play here at $66,850-ish per coin. But on a larger move, what can we expect out of this chart? Let's go ahead and get fib-based extensions, okay? So we'll come in from the low up to the high, down to the pullback, and all we really want to be concerned with is the 50% extension and the 100% extension. So we'll go ahead and just pop some levels on here to make it less colorful, easier on the eyes. Let's find that 100%. So that would be up here. There we go. Now let's clean up the fibs, get rid of that nonsense. So first target on the 50% extension, basically a 50% run of the length of the initial bull flag. So half of that would take us into 71,000 even just about. That's the first target on a break of the all-time high. After that, a 100% extension, so basically traveling this full distance here again, would bring us into $84,000 per coin, give or take. Now, does it get there all in one go? I'm not saying that at all, but I am saying that's a structural number, which is at least worth putting a little bit of emphasis into, right? So those are really the upside targets. Again, is it realistic that it happens in a weekend? No, but if it does happen over the course of a month, I wouldn't be surprised. It would be a beautiful breakout, beautiful mirror image, market symmetry here of the move we just saw inside of Bitcoin. To the downside, targets are much more clean cut. Again, I'm not expecting a full-blown collapse in Bitcoin, so we can just watch out for 57. You can certainly see that acted as support from in here, prior resistance as well. Then underneath we have this 55,000 mark, which starts to get more in tune with those psychological numbers. Notably, 50,000 wasn't really respected as a big psychological number, but 55, I could certainly see the argument for that acting as a stronger support on the breakdown of 57,888. So that's really going to wrap up Bitcoin in a nutshell. There's a short-term support trend line. You could make the argument for something that looks like this. Note that we have anchor, touch number 1, touch number 2. So on any sort of further pullbacks, it would be ideal if we didn't make it all the way to the bottom end of the range and we did start to put in these higher lows, working our way into some sort of ascending triangle, making the breakout up and over 64,000 that much more attractive in Bitcoin. So hopefully that was helpful in terms of scouting for those upper targets, talking about the trend line and pattern that could develop. Let's get into Ethereum here, move right along. We'll scrunch the chart up so you can see well above, or not maybe well above, but kind of sitting at and around prior all-time highs here. If we zoom back into the chart currently, notice that this consolidation is again happening above prior all-time highs. That, of course, is going to be slightly more bullish than as if it were happening underneath prior all-time highs. The one thing that's bearish about this, which I would need to bring up, is the fact that it's turning into a bit of a descending triangle. You could also look at it as a bullish pennant. So, again, in the short term, a breakdown of this could lead to a scalp lower, a quick little breakdown back into our 43.77, underneath 44.58, call it 44.60 for round number's sake, the floor of this descending triangle pattern. On a break of the resistance trend line, what are we looking out for? Well, certainly just a rotation back up towards these highs. The new all-time highs inside of Ethereum are going to be at and around this 46.42 on a breakout. Really, I still do strongly believe if the trend remains intact, if we can see another big, strong crypto push, 5,000 is really what Ethereum is kind of reaching for in my estimation. So keep that in mind as an upside target. You have sort of some of these downside levels mapped out. However, just recognize the trend that we're in, right? This is a very controlled uptrend, push, consolidation, so on and so forth. This is another push and some consolidation. So it would at least be reasonable to think that we could see another push here inside of Ethereum. You do what works until it literally doesn't. And in that case, hopefully you have a stop loss in place that will mitigate some of your losses, right? So that's Ethereum in a nutshell. Let's move on over to Binance Coin, which is the new one added to the list. Basically, in last week's video, we were talking all about this bull flag right here needing a little bit more consolidation. Obviously, it did that, broke out, and took us into our next known target at 615. Go back and watch the video. You can see where that's coming from. Let me scrunch this up. That's our level of resistance from in here. If we can clear it, it's back up to all-time highs. 691 is the number to watch out for. Based on the nature of how we've gotten here, based on the nature of what is typical for Binance Coin. So look at this move in relationship to this move. We're kind of on par or due, if you will, for a little bit of consolidation. Now, remember, markets can always do whatever they want to do, but it would stand to reason at least that we get some sideways price digestion just under the number. Boom, a breakout starts to bring us closer to that 691, which we just explored. On any sort of further pullback, so something that doesn't really respect this area here as flag consolidation, I would just watch out for this prior set of highs in here. Notice that I'm splitting the difference between this set, and this set from in here, which really triggered the breakout for higher at and around this 563 mark. We'll call it for round number's sake. So that's Binance Coin in a nutshell. That would be my real, strong line in the sand. Anything underneath, if we start to bounce, right, what have I just drawn? You really want to kind of avoid the possibility for a head and shoulders pattern to emerge, and I could see that potentially happening on a further breakdown of that 563, which is why, again, it's going to act as a line in the sand. Next up, we'll move on over to Cardano. This one's really just going sideways in no man's land, just sitting down below, still weak compared to the rest of our cryptocurrencies that we've looked at so far. Treat this as a similar range to what we have in Bitcoin. It's either, again, going to be a directional move up and out of it here, or down and underneath. So those levels to monitor for are going to be, let's zoom in on that a little bit. Firstly, to the upside, we have the $2.08, we'll call it, round numbers sake. Again, we're placing a lot of emphasis on this support, not so much this fake breakout here, but if retested, boom, something like that, break of the resistance trend line as well, does produce a more directional move back up towards 232. To the downside, the support that's in play is slightly above the 182, but again, let me scrunch this up and remind you of where this is coming from. Very historic level, we have a prior area of resistance, support, kind of hovering just above it here as well. If I scrunch it up even further, also a big resistance from in the past. So that's really the number I would pay attention to. A further breakdown of that does get us closer to 163, but as the chart sits right now, it's not really the relative strength monster that it once was. I do think that Solana is kind of stealing some of the thunder here. So let's go ahead and check in on that chart, and you can certainly see again why we've added this. Just look at the bullishness of this chart. In last week's video, again, we were talking about this pattern, this kind of bull flag consolidation that was happening. We were literally trading right at and around here. You can see that we respected the support, did something like this, led to a big breakout. So do we have prior highs to contend with? No, we are making new all-time highs here inside of Solana. I would also point out that we can draw in a secondary support trend line, something that looks like, you could split the difference, honestly. I would kind of go with this, noting that our anchor is here. Touch number 1 isn't beautiful, but look at the better fit that we get with 2 and 3. So I would go with this. Note also that it's a secondary support trend line, so will it hold forever? Absolutely not. We would still have the main one underneath, the primary, to contend with on a larger breakdown. But does it really look like the chart? Oops, let's go ahead and put that back. Does it really look like the chart wants to break down here? I would argue not really. I mean, certainly just putting into play another bull flag, some healthy consolidation up here. Let's go ahead and draw this in as a level. Note that it was a prior breakout point, led to this. If it wants to hold as a higher low, that's a beautiful thing. The target will be right back up to these all-time highs, which let's go ahead and throw a level on at 247.86. After that, you're monitoring for blue sky territories, whole and half dollars. Actually, on something like this, you're probably just looking at $5 marks, $10 marks, $25 marks as the big major resistances to pay attention to. 250 notably comfortably is right overhead. If we can clear it, that's a big psychological target out of the way. I could see the chart continuing to run. On any further pullbacks, 215 is the number to watch out for, noting that that was the prior all-time high, right? If we come back into it, we would want to see that act as the big higher low. Something like that could develop, remembering that here's low, higher low, higher low. That would make a perfect higher low, noting it would be a back test of the breakout point as well. As we discussed, that was the prior all-time high. Let's get into Litecoin, kind of speed things up here. Not really much going on. This was, again, not something that I would consider relatively strong to the crypto market. I would definitely look at Solana, even Binance Coin before I looked at this. So as of right now, not really too attractive for a trade, certainly rejecting at a known area of resistance, breaking down under this area of support. We're trading underneath now. So again, I would say it's kind of a crapshoot in here. Could do something like this, kind of just looking for ping pong in between 201 and 188. If it does want to recapture 201, that's an interesting thing. Because technically this could resolve back to the upside here to about 210. A knock on that door one more time after a higher low. And again, thinking in terms of this is your major, that's your next low. This could potentially be a set of higher lows. A knock on that door, we have 1, 2, that would be 3 in a short proximity of time here. Could be the one that takes it higher, in which case, let's go ahead and scrunch up the chart just to find those upper targets. Really a lot of room to run, honestly. Over 210 brings us to 232. Doesn't, I'm not saying that happens all in one day, all in 1 week, but I am saying there is some room to run. Poor structure from back in here, should be moved through with relative ease. But as we've mentioned, again, not really relatively strong comparatively to something like your Solana, Binance Coin, even Bitcoin, I would say, is much more bullish than what's going on here in Litecoin. Let's continue on with Ripple. This one, same sort of deal. Back testing this big breakout point from earlier on in the week, and we'll see if it resolves. Right now, we are printing some hammer candles around it, so it looks like it may. That's going to be at $1.1460, so keep an eye on that. If it resolves higher, clearly looking at this as your next up for resistance. Let's throw that on the chart at 1.2018. After that, certainly back to the top at 1.2422. So those are upside targets here. To the downside, obviously a move back into this range puts into play a look above and fail. Target has to be the bottom end here at the $1.07-ish mark. Let's go ahead and clean up the resistance trend line. No longer really in play. No support trend lines to point out. This one, again, if we scrunch it up for relative strength check, it's okay, but it's not, again, as strong as some of those other coins that we've looked at so far. Let's get into the Dogecoin, the big old Doge, and not a lot, right? Obviously retracing a majority of this big euphoric move that happened here, putting in lower highs on the way. So again, more of a trade, not so much an investment to me. Just kind of grinding to the downside, would kind of stay away until there's a clear break of this resistance trend line. So if I come in and do something like that, you can certainly see has been respected as anchor, touch number 1, grinding against it here, touching it in here. So a break of that, maybe there's a move back higher. This support trend line is no longer really in play. It's all about the horizontal levels. The chart just isn't as clean. Again, I would be very patient to see if we can break this through solid price activity. If it just goes sideways through it, not as excited about a long-sided trade here in Dogecoin. You would also probably want to see a little bit more social media attention on the coin itself if we got any lift here and there's going to be some serious follow through to the upside. I'm just talking about back up towards these highs at and around 32 cents. Let's wrap up the video with ShibaInu, okay? And jumping over to this one, a fairly clean chart, so I will give it that. However, big breakdown of the anticipated consolidation range from here. You can see early on in the week, it dipped its toe underneath. Big fears about potentially the whale, quote unquote, diversifying his wallets there, maybe getting ready to dump some coins. However, right back inside of the range. So I'm not quite looking at this as a look below and fail. It's not like we're immediately going to target the top end. I would really focus on this resistance trend line right here. Already putting in a little bit of an upper wick on the 4-hour chart. We'll see if it wants to give us a higher low pullback. So it would need to be, I would say, again, just in terms of talking about bullishness, on a scale from like 1 to 10, Number 1 being the most bullish would just be that the candle closes strong inside of this range. Number 5, like medium-term bullish, would be that we pull back, form a higher low, and get back into it in a very short proximity of time. So here's your higher low from the anchor low down here. Number 10, like the most bearish outcome, least bullish, would be big rejection here and continuing on to retest and set an equal low at and around this 4,500-ish number. Okay, so I'm omitting the zeros in front, but 4,500 to the downside. To the upside, on the break of this resistance challenge, you're going to have to walk up horizontally horizontal targets this time around. Notably, this 7,500 mark, that to me is the big one to be paying attention to. You can see rejection here, never quite made it on that upper wick. That's kind of what formed this resistance trend line, of course. So that is the number to be paying attention to, 7,500. And after that, again, if it really wants to go big, social media euphoria once again, maybe back up towards these highs, and we'll monitor for continuation after that. That's really going to wrap up the video. I know it was a long one here. However, these coins are all worth keeping an eye on as it's becoming a bigger and bigger part of our market as a whole. If you enjoyed the video or learned anything new, let me know in the comments section or by giving the video a thumbs up. Don't forget, if you want to vote for Stellar to make a reappearance, let me know down below there as well. Don't forget, our secondary channel is linked down below in the description. We do 10 to 12 videos there a day on different stocks, sometimes cryptos. And with that being said, I wish you all a green trading week.